My dad bought this laptop back in 2007, and it still works. Thanks for coming back for more pie, everyone. So, how did I keep this laptop alive for over 10 years? I mean, sure, I've swapped out the hard drive with an SSD, upgraded the RAM, and swapped out the battery, but it's taken a lot more than that. You see, laptops back then not only let you upgrade components, but they also had screws that were big enough that you could fit small household screwdrivers into them to remove. Nowadays though, manufacturers wouldn't want to burden you with the thought of fixing something yourself on devices in your house that wear out the most. Portable electronics. But since we actually have the option here, let me take you back to a few years ago to the last time that I repaired this thing, when I put a new bezel on after the old one was cracking. That and the hinges on this thing felt like they were going because the bezel and the screen were wobbling too far back and forth. So join me on this repair and I'll fill you in on everything that I've had to do to keep this thing alive along the way. After I removed the screws from the bezel, I was able to pry it off. The new bezel also came with a new back and some new hinges, so I began unscrewing everything from the screen. There we go, there goes the back cover. Here you can see how wobbly the screen really is. Since the new bezel comes with new wires, I have to take the whole laptop apart to get access to them. The little release lever on this battery is broken, and this isn't even the original battery. Since it's easy enough to replace this battery, I've replaced it 3 times. Now, the first time that I replaced the battery in this thing, I was met with a hurdle from Sony. They actually embedded a password into the BIOS that only official Sony batteries had the code for. So, when I ordered this battery for the first time, it actually came with what it called was a driver CD, but it was actually a BIOS update that allowed me to bypass the password altogether and to use the third-party battery. The laptop originally came with 2 gigabytes of RAM, and I was able to later upgrade that to 3. Back when SSDs were getting popular, I saved up my money to replace the hard drive. My ghetto solution to keep the solid-state drive in place. Now, before I installed this SSD, this was the very first one that I purchased way back in 2010. It boasted over 200 megabytes per second, which was good because it was only a 60 gig drive. Now in 2018, I could buy a whole terabyte for what this cost. The next thing I did was take out every last screw. There's the DVD-ROM, which actually, this has yet to work because ever since I updated Windows 10, that hasn't been working, but I barely use it anyway. So this is the RAM that I've upgraded to 2 gigabyte sticks. A second time I upgraded the RAM to 4 gigabytes, and it took me a while because I had to get a 64-bit operating system first. Let's go. There we go. These things are interesting because all you gotta do is slide out the gray part, like that, and then the ribbon cable comes right out. After I got the top cover off, I found out the source to the problem of my wobbly screen. Looks like the screws are a bit loose because it's wobbling below them. I must not have tightened them all the way while I was replacing the last screen. With that unscrewed, I disconnected the webcam, the monitor, the Wi-Fi antennas, and the microphone cable. And so with that, I have removed the screen. This is actually the 4th screen I've had in this laptop. Each time that line started appearing on the screen, or I just simply broke it, I went onto Amazon and bought a new one for $50 to $70. There we go. So here's the motherboard. The main thing that I have done here is notice this doesn't exactly look like the most professional job here. This is actually a yellow RCA cable that I had ripped out of an old DVD player here. The power jack broke, so I needed something to replace it with. I then soldered the wires from the inside to it and mounted it with epoxy putty. And so, of course, I've taken a DVD cable and soldered that to the end of my power cord. Now, I've used a piece from a Rubik's Cube, a Zanchi more specifically, to solder the wires together and knot them. Although it didn't work so well because it got tripped over one time and it got yanked out of there. But, you know, it still works just fine. And ever since I replaced the port, I've had to replace this RCA cable about 3 times, and the RCA port in the laptop 2 more times. Wow, this looks like it's still in really nice condition. Oh, except the front here. So a little scuffed up, but for 15 bucks, I'm not complaining. Even though the loose screws were probably the full culprit to the screen wobbling, I decided to put on the new brackets that came with the new bezel, because they certainly hadn't endured as much abuse as my old ones had. All right, gonna really tighten them in there. All right, it still bobbles a little bit, but I think that's more natural now. Once I got the screen installed again, I got out some super glue so I could keep these cables connected here. The cables that I got with the last screen were just barely long enough. But before I could do that, I had to unplug an old super glue tube of mine. And as I was going down into it to unplug it, the safety pin plugged a hole in the side of it. Now I have glue all over my hands. That, of course, made it a lot harder to grip things. Have a working webcam again. Or whatever. There we go. Look at this. This side has only 1 plastic connector still on here, while the new one has all 4. So I will no longer have to tape it on there. That is so amazing, dude. All right, let's pull out this little plastic connector and slide in the ribbon cable from the keyboard. But as I was putting the keyboard back on, I've noticed a problem. Oh, this thing's gotta come off. Ooh, there we go. Haha, love those snaps. So satisfying. Now, one interesting thing is this key here didn't always used to be missing. What originally broke was the O key. It lost its springiness or something. So, and what happened was I took the key off and I noticed that these little white connectors were broken, but the key itself was in fine shape. So I thought, wait a second, what if I just find another key that I never use and then just take the white connectors from that and put it back in the O key? I didn't even know what that key was used for anyway. Corner screws first. In place. And the SSD. And of course, my very professional mounted SSD. That's one of the camcorder screws, so that one's not very helpful. All right, now time to see if it works. There we go. Oh, powering on. So the button still works. And there it is, there's the screen. So, got the screen all hooked up. Oh, updates. Keyboard works, great. All right, so it doesn't look like the webcam's working, but then again, that could be a driver issue with Windows 10. So overall, was it worth it to keep repairing this thing over and over again? Well, since I had the free time, yeah. I mean, buying another $50 screen would keep the laptop working for a few more years. But now it's even starting to struggle going through Facebook, something a $200 Chromebook can do way better at. And this thing originally cost like $1,200 when my dad first got it. But now, since I'm graduated from college and I don't need to take notes all the time in classrooms, I don't really need to use a laptop anymore. I mean, smartphones have gotten good enough that I just bring my Google Pixel with me everywhere I go when I travel. I mean, it would be kind of nice to get a Chromebook for the occasional time I want to hang out with people in the living room and do a little bit more than just typing on a touch screen. But for now, I'm pretty happy with my phone and my desktop. But I suppose the biggest reason for me fixing this laptop all the time was to have it be a testament that you don't need to buy the latest and greatest thing every time your electronics start acting up. You can be perfectly content with what you have, and if you can fix it yourself, great, you can save a few bucks while doing it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'd also like to thank Noah Jame, who was my cameraman when I took it apart last, and I hope you guys come back for more pie in the next video. See ya!